Hello everyone, I'm Rodney from 3DGameMan.com, and today I'm looking at the Fractal Design Core 3300 case. A very plain looking box, but it does have all of the information that you really need if you are picking this up in store, like for example some pictures of it as well as features and specifications about it. It's packaged very well between two pieces of styrofoam, and the case itself is in a plastic bag. Included is a user's manual and an accessory box, and in it is a bunch of screws and cable ties and, items for installing all the computer components. This case is part of the new X3 line of cases that they have, or the Core 3000 series. This one is the 3300. Now this is a fairly wide case, and you're going to be able to fit a lot of gear on the inside. This is a mid-tower case, though not tremendously large overall, although it does have kind of like a boxy feel to it. I think the overall styling on this is out of this world. It's very, very beautiful. Not a lot of rounded corners, but they've done a fantastic job here on the front bezel. It's mostly steel except for some plastic and mesh, and as you can see, it is all black. And the actual dimension on this case is 233 by 451 by 517 millimeters. So in fact, it is very, very wide. It also weighs in at 7.8 kilograms. So let's have a closer look at the case, starting at the top. Note that they do not include any fans, but you can install up to two 120 or two 140 millimeter fans, but again, these are optional. As well, you can install a 30 millimeter thick 240 millimeter radiator or a 30 millimeter thick 280 millimeter radiator up here. As well, here's the power and reset buttons, and by the way, these are quality buttons, a hard drive activity LED, the audio jacks for the headphone and microphone, as well as two USB 3 ports. Now, many new cases are opting out of 5¼ inch drive bays because it gives a little bit more space on the inside of the case. It also preserves the look on the front, but this one does have two 5¼ inch drive bays. The front panel itself has this brushed aluminum look. It isn't brushed aluminum, it is plastic. You've got mesh on either side. This doubles as ventilation, and there's filters on the inside. As well, at the bottom, you've got their logo. Now this front panel can be easily removed by pulling at the bottom, and it is completely detached, so you don't have to worry about, cables being attached to the front panel, and that is the situation on some cases. It's really annoying. Now, I mentioned filters before. Here are those filters on either side. If you look at the front panel, you can see the mesh that will allow the fan or fans to intake all kinds of cool air. Now, speaking of fans, they include a 140 millimeter intake fan. You can install another optional 140 millimeter fan if you want to. You can as well install 120 millimeter fans here. And like the top of the case, you can install a 240 or a 280 millimeter radiator. The left side panel has provision for installing an optional 120 or 140 millimeter fan, but the right side panel is plain. At the back of the case, at the very top, there's ventilation. Note that they include a 140 millimeter exhaust fan, but optionally you can install a 120. Oh, and I should mention this. All of the leads here on the fans are sleeved, and these are 3-pin connectors. Here we have 7 ventilated expansion slots. Note the black-white kind of theme that's going on here. I think it looks quite nice. As well, at the bottom, you can install a standard ATX power supply, and they include 4 thumb screws, 2 on each side panel. Now, this is a mid-tower case, but there's lots of space to work on the inside. You see this drive bracket right here, that can be completely removed if need be. Now, you can install up to 3 3.5 inch or up to 3 2.5 inch drives on this particular bracket. And by the way, they do have these rubber grommets here to cut down on the vibrations. You've got a couple of screws here, thumb screws at the top and another one at the bottom. Remove those and this comes right off, and that's to give you more space on the inside of the case. Now, there are a couple of mounting places for 2.5 inch drives on the back on the motherboard tray, so don't worry if you take this out, you still have provision for some drives to be installed. Oh, and they have Fractal Design, their logo stamped right here. Now this case fits a number of different form factor motherboards: ATX, extended ATX, micro ATX, mini ITX motherboards. Lots of compatibility here when it comes to that. Plus, You've got a large hole on the motherboard tray. That's for the cooler's retention plate. Lots of cable management holes as well as punch outs behind the motherboard tray and plenty of space behind the motherboard tray. 22 millimeters of space for routing cables. That's glorious because you can tuck all the cables behind the motherboard tray. No fancy design here when it comes to removal of the expansion slots, which is okay by me. Thumb screws work perfectly. At the bottom they have rubber rests for the power supply to lodge on, as well as a piece of rubber here at the back, and this will cut down on vibrations. And you can install an optional 120 or 140 millimeter fan. Now let's go over the video card and power supply length as well as the cooler height. You're going to be able to fit a long video card in this if you have the drive bracket removed, or if you just have, like, for example, one 3.5 inch drive at the bottom. If you have 2.5 inch drives, it shouldn't really interfere that much at all, to be honest. However, if you do, you can have a video card that is up to 255 millimeters in length, but without, and if it doesn't interfere, you can have a video card or video cards that is up to 430 millimeters in length. Now, power supply length will vary. It depends on whether you have a 120 or 140 millimeter fan installed at the bottom. If you do have a fan installed, you'll be able to fit a power supply that is up to 170 millimeters in length. Otherwise, well, you've got all this space here to install a power supply, and you'll be able to fit pretty much any power supply of any high wattage in this case if you don't have a fan installed at the bottom. And some of the higher wattage power supplies now are not very long anyway. And there really isn't going to be a problem installing any CPU air cooler on the planet because you can install one that is up to 185 millimeters in height. Now let's take a peek behind the motherboard tray. Again, you can install up to two 2.5 inch drives back here and route all kinds of cables because you've got 22 millimeters of space to do so. I love cases that give you that little tiny bit of extra space because, well, it's a lot better. You can really easily, work back here, as opposed to some cases that have like 5 or 10 millimeters of space. It can be very tight. At the bottom of the case, there are 4 plastic feet, and these aren't super tall, so if you're putting this case on a soft surface like carpet, well, it's going to sink down. That could be a problem for the bottom fans. And they include a removable dust filter. Quite a beautiful case overall when it comes to styling and features. I mean, it has tons of space, lots of options on the inside, plus it looks extremely sharp. Without a doubt, this is a kick-ass product. Until next time, take care.